So hi, Chris.
Hi, Bektour. How is it there?
Really nice to meet you. Yeah, I'm good, and you're from Indonesia, as far as I understood, right?
Yes. We hear. Have you report directly from Ukraine?
Yes, I've been doing that since 2014, and
Uh, have Have you visited the Ukraine?
yeah, I just returned from Ukraine like 10 days ago or
Mm.
something.
Okay.
Uh, I go there from time to time, and the thing is, I actually lived in Ukraine for about 2 years.
Oh,
So this country means a lot to me. And I'm also curious about you, of course. So you've also been to Ukraine, right?
I was in Ukraine last summer for a few months. So it was in the middle of the war. Maybe it's same as you. It was quite a terrific experience. I was my last days in Ukraine. I was I have to hide in the bunker with some soldiers in Kharkiv because
Mhm.
our location to speak, our location to talk was attacked by Russian artillery. How about your experience back?
Well, my Ukrainian story is very long, actually, because it's I understand now that my connection with Ukraine it's so much deeper than just being a journalist there, because I started visiting Ukraine in 2010, actually a long time
Mhm.
ago, and since
Oh,
then
long
I
ago.
integrated really deeply into Ukraine and its culture.
Mhm.
I speak Ukrainian language now
Oh.
fluently, so
Mhm.
it's a very important country to me.
Mhm.
And when the war began in 2014, I took it very personally because
Mhm.
Ukraine has so much in common actually with my country.
Mhm.
We've gone through so much of common trauma in the past.
Mhm.
So yeah, and then at some point I moved to live in Ukraine. So that's why my connection with Ukraine has been very very deep
Mhm.
for many years now. Yeah. And
Yeah.
but I'm really interested
Mhm.
about particularly about Indonesia, because I wonder, like um from like why and which part of the war, which angle of the war would be the most important one for the Indonesian audience to learn about.
Well, in Indonesia, when I was in Ukraine, and this later on now, in Indonesia, we particularly interest on how this war will end, when will war this will, because it is our very very interested about this war to end because we have like many other nations we experience very high inflation, very high, very constrained supply chain, and everything every price is up now, like maybe in the Europe, in the US, because of this war, because in this interconnected world, everything connected. We cannot separate ourselves from the war in far away. That's the first question: when and how this war will end. And the other interesting topic for us is about humanity, because this war make so many people displaced internally or outside Ukraine. Million Ukraine, or of course a million not Ukraine, must have to force to displace from their home, from their city. I met personally with some of the refugees. We Indonesian as well. We need to evacuate hundreds of our citizens. Back in the start of war, it was a messy situation. It was a hard situation, and during the time, our ambassador to Ukraine was sick. Then, unfortunately, eventually he passed away after the operation of a question. And we in Indonesia, unfortunately, split about the Ukraine. One part of some Indonesian think this is just war. They see the Russian uh, as the um, as the for power to stand up against US. and but the other side tell our the other side of Indonesia said, no, this is not about the U.S. or Russia or other that big power. This is about humanity. There are millions of people displaced, forced displaced. This is about territorial integrity, about international principle, about international law. It's like we in Indonesia understand from the integral territory integral, because we in Indonesia we have some in Southeast Asia we have some problem with the territorial integrities, because we claim and claim with some other state, namely some like we Indonesia, Southeast Asian nation, we have claim reclaim with China in maritime zone in South China Sea. So we understand the feeling of Ukraine. How so? In many occasions, I told people, I told my reader or my audience, the always said question: what if a foreign nation attack our country? You can find the answer, then you will understand what Ukrainian experience right now. So I'm continue to write to report about Ukraine. It was I originally write about Ukraine since the certainly not before the war. My I start to report routinely about Ukraine in maybe in 20 in 2021. There's the internship. Prior to that, it was because not so because the source is very limited about the war in Donbass in Luhansk and Donetsk. And I tell during the war, I share my experience how threatening the front line, how fearful the front line was. So my our audience understand why this war needs to end as soon as possible. How in Kyrgyzstan the reaction of the people?
I think it's like one of the main differences I think that exists is that Kyrgyzstan was part of Russian Empire first, and then Soviet Union. So basically, we see it, I guess, differently because we were together in Ukraine with the same, together with Ukraine in the same empire, And for many of us in Kyrgyzstan, when Ukraine was first attacked by Russia in 2014, it was perceived as attack against all of us, against all the former colonies of Russia. The problem with the understanding from the rest of the world for us is that not so many people, unfortunately, we think, including in Western European countries or in the U.S., actually know about Russian colonialism. That Russia was also a colonial empire that used to occupy lands, and used to do all the horrible things that colonial empires usually do. And this is the point that is being missed by many scholars, by many academics, by many journalists even. And I think this is what Russia has been exploiting a lot, especially in Africa. They managed to build in 1960s this image of the Soviet Union as the liberator of countries from the Western colonial powers. And this is how this whole narrative that Russia is a savior of the world from colonial powers. I mean, it's such a liars on on one hand. On the other hand, it's being exploited by Russia to justify its horrible actions that it has been doing for centuries now, actually. And that's why for us, it was a challenge to our independence too. When Russia occupied Crimea first, we thought, wow, that's insane, because Kyrgyzstan was at the same status as Crimea was within the Soviet Union, just like 18 years before Crimea changed its status. So if Russia used the same logic that it used to occupy Crimea, they would easily do the same with Kyrgyzstan, with the whole Kazakhstan, for example. Because we were having the same status of autonomy with Crimea within Russian Federation or something, during 1930s, for example. So so that's why, you know, for us it was challenging, but at the same time, what really is challenging for us as well is how Russia influences Kyrgyzstan with its propaganda. And Russia has been doing it enormously. Like what helps Russia is that a significant part of the population of Kyrgyzstan uses Russian as the first language, especially in the capital. And that's why it's so easy for them to reach our population. And still, you know, like two main Russian state TV channels, they are part of, you know, this sort of default option of TV channels, which is available to everybody in the country. And people still have this habit whenever they, for example, a TV set, like they would even set it up such a way that Russian state TV channels would be one of the first ones, you know, to be shown when you switch on the television. That's insane, you know. And Russian TV, state TV, has been hysterical since 2014. They dedicated so much of their broadcast to Ukraine, but of course, mostly, you know, like demonizing Ukraine as much as possible and creating these myths about Ukraine being a Nazi state or whatever they, you know, say. And our society is completely divided because of that. So we have people who follow this Russian propaganda, especially people from the older generation, people who are also somehow nostalgic about the Soviet past, the communist past, whatever. We also have, you know, this pro-Ukrainian part of the population. And it's interesting that, you know, your attitude towards Ukraine in Kyrgyzstan, it became, you know, this sort of a very principal sort of question, you know, like it basically shows your attitude to many other political issues in general. But I'm really curious, you know, about like if is Russia actually doing anything in Indonesia like that? Like, do they launch their own media outlets, or do they try somehow to influence public opinion?
It was interesting before we decided to flew to the Ukraine. It was it's not explicitly, but it seemed like Russia offering us not directly offering us to travel to Donetsk and Luhansk to the Russian occupied area with their money. Some guys they offer you just need to fly to Moscow. Then in Moscow we will handle everything. Wow, is it like to influence us, something like that? And that's the first thing. And the other one, in many, it was at least 4 or 5 times. There are some of Russian guys offering cooperation with us, cooperation with the Russian state media. They said we can manage the cooperation between your news outlet with our news outlet. And we will make it more convenient for you. Is like the first reason we turn back the offer is no, we don't have the budget for that. We don't have the money for that. But no, that's okay. It's okay. You don't have to think about the budget. We will handle everything. It's like to influence, and then the second, the other effort by Russian is mainly from social media. We have like 100 something people access social media in Indonesia. 100 million. 100 million people access Facebook, access Twitter, and Instagram, and so many disinformation in social media. You know how social media works. It's so many account. We don't know. We don't understand how this account grow. How this account suddenly came and they spread about information about how might the Russia, how right it, like you say, Russia and is the savior for the world. Russia will stand for us against the U.S. and the NATO and other West imperialism, something like that. It was for me. Sometimes I laugh and make joke of that, but me myself and many of my friends know this is not joke. This is about influencing people. So unfortunately, so we have about literacy problem. So many people believe that sort of the tweet the post on Facebook, which cannot be verified. So yes, it a few months ago, some of the Ukrainian official was caught with corruption, was charged with corruption. It was very much spread in Indonesia. See, the Ukrainian is corrupt nation. The Ukrainian official is corrupt nation. It was very much spread with in social media, and me myself and our news outlet choose to say like this. See, this is the serious effort of Ukraine to to manage to fix themselves to even in war corruption fight against corruption not stop. Even in war the corrupt people still get in charge. That's what we should see. That's what we should follow. Never stop uh, to war against corruption. Don't follow the corrupt nation. Yes, we know what this corrupt nation is.
And that's why, and at the same time, not so many media were reporting on Ukraine from the ground. That was the problem, because it's so expensive still to travel to Ukraine. And in 2014, we were the first media outlet that decided to go to Ukraine, like by ourselves, And I paid my own money just to fly to Kiev back when Euromaidan revolution was going on. And because I thought, I saw so many foreign journalists in Ukraine from countries which were very far from Ukraine, like I saw so many Japanese reporters, for example. I saw Chinese reporters. I saw, reporters from Australia. And then I would think, well, why there are no reporters from Central Asia? That's so bizarre, because Central Asia is so much directly affected by the consequences of the war, actually by the war itself even, And if Ukraine loses the war, then my country will not survive it. Russia really has these dreams of restoring the Soviet Union, and we are very much afraid of that. And Ukraine is the only country that managed to fight with Russia equally, or even better, than Russia in some instances, which makes us very happy, because usually we were afraid of Russia. And for us, that's really important that Ukraine sets this example and fights for the freedom of all of us. So yeah, that's sorry. I can go into very long, monologues about it because it's been such an important part of my life for so many years now.
Well, first of all, I need to clarify one thing. When the Euromedian happened, is there any? It was any feeling like, oh no, we will be the next. Is that kind of feeling between the Kyrgyzstan?
Well, Euromaidan itself, maybe not really, because we had a similar revolution.
Sorry, not Euromaidan, but the Crimea. Sorry,
the Crimea. You mean the occupation of Crimea? Oh yeah, absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely. It was like, and because in March 2014, it was so interesting. Like Russia started doing several things simultaneously. So they occupied Crimea, and at the very same time, they made it easier for people in Kyrgyzstan to obtain Russian citizenship. And they made requirements a bit easier. So if before you needed to prove that you have some ethnic Russian origin to get Russian citizenship easily, now it's enough just to speak Russian language to obtain Russian citizenship. And in Kyrgyzstan, like most of people speak Russian language. Like it's our colonial legacy, right? And so that's the thing that they did. And also what they started doing, it also started in March 2014. They started putting pressure on our parliament so that they would start adopting legislation that was very similar to Russia's most repressive legislation against media freedom, mostly, actually. So, so they started putting pressure like this. And our parliament first tried to kind of, to resist against it, and they didn't actually vote for this legislation. But unfortunately, in the end, they managed actually to push it through. And in 2021, our parliament adopted a very, very shameful legislation, which is called, they called it, I think, the fake law, or something, the fake bill, the bill on fakes, which is designed kind of to show that, they are fighting against fake information or fake news, but in reality, it is a tool for them to censor media.
Okay.
And they are now thinking of adopting a legislation on foreign agents bill, which is very similar to the one that Russia has adopted several years ago and has been using it, as a tool to basically fight any opposition. So, yeah, and when Russia occupied Crimea, that was the total violation of this agreement that existed between countries of the former Soviet Union after 1991, and all of us were like, okay, this is such a dangerous precedent, that they are doing, and if they are let, do such things and nobody, does anything against it, it will be so easy for Russians, just to reclaim again, like, or to attack again, all the other countries that used to be part of the USSR. So yeah, I mean, for us, it was definitely like, for me personally, it was a divisive moment. Like, I mean, also because I also traveled to Donetsk immediately after that, and I basically saw with my own eyes how Russia started the war there. And it was so scary, and because we were calm after 90s, we were thinking, okay, those times are gone. Like, it's very little chance that something like that will come back. But then it was coming back, and we were like, oh my God, it's unbelievable.
It's like an awakening moment, right?
I mean, in 2014, it was more like a terrifying moment that something that you thought was left in the past suddenly woke up again.
And yeah, I don't know how about your in Kyrgyzstan about Russia and China, but we in Southeast Asia very much close with China in terms of geographically, and some of us nation in Central Asia and Eurasia is a member of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, right? Is Kyrgyzstan the member as well, right?
Yeah, we are. We've been, unfortunately. Yeah,
and that organization is campaigning very much. It's like they said it is the new non-block movement. It's like they use the narrative. See, the Sukarno, our first president, made non-block. Now Russia and China made this SGO, like it's like to evolve to and to carry on the non-block movement. Oh no, hell no! It's not like that, because the non-block area was to challenge the imperialism, but the true motors of SEO, we cannot say it challenged the imperialism. It's like they dictate another country. I don't know about Kyrgyzstan, but is Kyrgyzstan really like Kyrgyzstan? Is Kyrgyzstan really okay with China to come to the country? Okay with Russia come to the country and do this and do that? Like the fake news bill? Oh come on, we don't have that. Literally, but yes, we have some. We have some. It's called electronic transaction bill. You can charge people, you can sue people with that bill in internet. But we for years, the media, the civil society vehemently attempt to amend the bill. So is now the government hear our voice, and they will change the bill. So nobody will be charged like posting some memes or posting some stories in Facebook. We against the fake news, but we also against any attempt to frame effort to spread truth, to spread the any intimidation as a fake news. That's not good. That's not how democratic society works. And well, since you this is interesting. You mentioned about the fake news bill. You mentioned about um foreign agent bill. How many journalists charged with that bill?
Well, foreign agent has not been adopted yet.
Oh,
but the fake news one. So we actually had the whole media organization, Radio Liberty, which is Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty branch in Kyrgyzstan. So, this huge media which is based in Czech Republic and funded by the US. So they were forced to shut down their operations in Kyrgyzstan.
Oh.
And it was the first time, I think, when partially it was related to this, fake news legislation. So authorities, also we actually got a warning once from authorities that we must delete one of our... Yes, our outlet, Kloop, that we must delete one of the stories based on this fake news bill, because, one of the government officials was... one of the government agencies, was not happy with, the way they were portrayed in one of the stories. We refused, of course, to delete it. And we never deleted it. And we have never done anything like that in our history. But, and then authorities actually, they took a step back, basically. They dropped, this complaint against us because there was too much of public outcry. So far, there is still space to fight against, this possible government censorship and attempts, to put pressure on media. But it's getting a bit more complicated, especially during last 2 years, and especially since we had, this change of power in 2020. But it's a very long story, so I'm afraid it will take me like about a couple of hours, to tell the whole background because Kyrgyz politics are very complicated. But in short, like Kyrgyz politics is also heavily dominated by organized crime. Unfortunately, Kyrgyzstan is a country which is standing on the path of the drug trafficking from Afghanistan, and also this whole smuggling trafficking from China. So China for us is a problem in this perspective, because there is this very influential Chinese mafia family which uses Kyrgyzstan as a country for smuggling, literally, of Chinese goods, and they earned a lot of money on that. And actually, one of our most famous investigations was about this family and how they corrupted our whole government, and they earned, according only to what we found, they earned $800 million, but in reality, this figure must be much higher. And and the other problem, like China, mostly causes economic problems for us. So Russia, not only economic, but also Russia tries to influence our internal politics. Russia tries to influence our culture. Russia tries to influence us through the language and everything. China is not doing that too much. What they are more interested in is giving us huge loans, which they know we will never be able to pay back. And then, but as you know, as a requirement of this loan is if we are not paying it back, then we are giving China something else instead of money. So, which is mostly our resources. And China now controls several key mining industry sort of location. They are especially interested in silicon, I think, that we have, and which they need for electronics production and whatever. So this is a huge interest for China, because we could be a really interesting market for them in terms of supplying this raw materials for electronics, and we are a convenient ones for that because we border China, from the west. And which is actually quite interesting, that if you think there is literally between us, between Indonesia and Kyrgyzstan, we are in the same continent, right? I mean, it's so interesting how we actually do share also some challenges, but there is huge China sort of between us. And maybe that's why it's one of the dividing sort of factors in our case. But also, Kyrgyzstan was so much isolated from the rest of Asia because of the Soviet Union, because of the Asian segment of the Iron Curtain, that we don't know much about Indonesia at all, for example. We don't know much about Southeast Asia in general, or actually about any other Asian country, because Central Asia was sort of, in this Russian-Soviet isolation from the rest of Asia. And but then when we became independent, China, of course, was very, very curious about how they exploit our markets, our raw materials, and also using us as, a transit for their goods. They have this whole One Belt, One Road initiative, where the idea is that they build, this basically highways through Central Asia to connect, directly with
from China to Europe.
With Europe, yeah. Also by trains, by roads, by whatever. So that's their main interest. It's mostly economic one.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry to hear about the press freedom in your country, but we don't have the similar problem. The similar problem in our country. We quite free. We can post meme about our president, our politician. But yes, we have problem with the press. The main problem is like some part of society, they don't trust the press. So we campaign. The press is not to tell you about the truth, but the press assists you to find the truth. So how about the trust of the society to press in Kyrgyzstan?
I think it's very similar to what you have described about Indonesia, in a way, because in Kyrgyzstan, situation with the freedom of press, it has been just dramatically changing. Like a sinusoid, because Kyrgyzstan had like 3 revolutions within a very short period of time, within basically 20 years, and after each revolution, situation would become better, and then it would become worse again. Then the next revolution, situation becomes better, then it's worse again, and so it was like floating like this all the time. And of course, within this very unstable political situation, a lot of media would emerge, but then also a lot of media would disappear. So in general, I would say people are skeptical about, media. But then it depends, because then if there is some strong collaboration between media begins, then also some media manage to survive through all these, turbulent years, like including our media, for example. And for some people, it is a sign of trust in a way that, that the media managed to survive through all the political turbulences and never became affiliated with a certain political power. And I think this is a very important reason for people in Kyrgyzstan to trust certain media, knowing that it does not directly connect it with any oligarch or with any, political force. And then, again, like for us, it's very important to inform people, especially about wrongdoings, and especially about, wrongdoings of authorities, and especially about the organized crime. And I think for us, the biggest success, of course, was, this whole series of investigations about organized crime and corruption in our government. And people's reaction was priceless. I mean, people actually managed to annul, the results of the parliament elections in 2020, and it was partially because of the investigation that we published. So it depends, really. Sometimes we have these tremendous cases of people and the press sort of even going together in questioning the wrongdoings of authorities. But then, of course, at other times, it's like unpredictably. It goes unpredictably wrong. So it's hard. But what I wanted to say in the end is, I think I really miss, I really think that there should be much more cross-border cooperation.
Yes.
And especially, between all of us in Asia, because we have so many common challenges, and yet there are parts of Asia which are completely disconnected from each other. And, maybe I hope that us knowing each other would actually bring, some interesting results in the future. So let's stay in touch, and I'd be very happy.
Yeah. If we looking forward to have the further cooperation.
Absolutely. It was really nice talking to you, Kris.
Very much appreciate for your time.